Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming in today. My name is Sridhar Mupri. I'm a co-founder of a gaming company called Yes No. We predominantly build free-to-play games. We did some cool stuff in Web3. That's the reason they asked me to moderate this. Um, I'm gonna let my panelists introduce themselves now and talk about a little bit about their background, and then we'll get into why Web3 as a space. Uh,
Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Prashant Joshua. I'm the founder and CEO at OneWords. We are building a metaverse platform that enables product discovery for real-world businesses.
Hi guys, I'm Ram Kumar. I'm one of the co-founders of Guardian Link. We are one of the largest gaming marketplace and ecosystem in Web3 right now. We work with Polygon and Nia. We have about 120,000 active users, daily active users in our platform, and glad to be here and looking forward for this one.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben. I'm one of the co-founders at Mighty Bear Games. So we're a cross-play, cross-platform development studio. We've been self-publishing for a while. Originally, we're a free-to-play, mobile-focused studio. We worked also with Apple Arcade. That's when we became fully cross-platform and cross-play. And our latest product is a free-to-play title that you can play in browser as well as on mobile. And has some elements that are blockchain powered, and I can share a little bit more about that later.
Hello everyone, my name is Kei, and I'm a corporate planning at the Mixi. And Mixi is a Japanese internet company, and we are mostly known for a mobile game called Monster Strike, and it has like 60 million downloads and a top grossing app in Japan. Pleasure to meet you all.
Cool. Well, I'll start off with somebody just asked a question from the crowd for the previous panel. Why blockchain? Why Web3 for gaming? Prashant, you want to start off? Why do you think, actually, it would be great if, Ram can start off actually.
Okay. So I had a very similar panel last time. I was speaking at Unfold, and why do you care? Like, why do you want blockchain in Web3? So I guess it starts with this ideology, right? Internet was supposed to be decentralized. When it started first, the intention of internet was to be for the people so that they could engage on the internet, do the economy on the internet, get rewarded on the internet. But that did not happen, right? It went ahead and got caught into like centralized players like Facebook or various other players that are there. Web3 kind of changes that, right? It makes it decentralized. Why it should be decentralized? For example, let's say if I'm playing a game and I buy, let's say about $1,000 worth of assets. I know that my ownership is based upon the centralized system that the game has made. If the game shuts down, my $1,000 is gone. There is no use of that. It's only useful within that ecosystem. With Web3, the ecosystem just becomes much more better and bigger. I could take that asset outside and probably trade it across all the marketplace that asset supports. Probably in the future, if it's possible, it can be interoperable as well. I can take it to multiple games and play there. So that changes a lot of things. The economy doesn't get centralized and accumulated to one particular entity. It just moves across multiple entities, and also the end user gets benefited because of that. So that is a fundamental thing. The overall ideology has to change, not only in gaming, in other applications as well, where the power should not be centralized, it should be decentralized. Along with it, there is other technology benefits that comes in as well. So, which I believe we can discuss further on why Web3 has to be adopted. But the major fundamental idea is the ideology of making things decentralized.
And anybody else has anything to add to that?
So coming from a Web2 perspective, I think first I have a lot of faith and I have a lot of belief in Web3 in general. So the idea of decentralized, assets or ownership and all these things are really important. I think for most players they're kind of foreign, right? They are used to a place where you just trust your publisher, your developer, whatever, with your assets. I think for us, the reason we went into Web3 first was a very clear use case, which is it's not so much about ownership, but it's something that MMORPG players understand well, I think. You can essentially exit your game without losing those assets. You just mentioned about that, but in a sense where you can essentially make your time back. Time is money or can be money. So the time that you spend in leveling up your characters, doing all that stuff, you can actually exit the ecosystem if you wish to and sell those assets back. So it's pretty interesting for me. Like it's a very simple, very, very basic use case of blockchain, but it's something that a lot of MMORPG players would understand. I used to play MMORPG games for many years, and every time I would be like, what am I going to do with all that stuff? It's like hundreds of hours of gameplay. And that's why I'm saying MMORPG players understand some of the value proposition of Web3. Everything else feels a little bit further down the line, which I find super interesting, but that's not the main reason. Maybe the second reason for us would be, which also is coming a little bit further down the line, is transparency. I find that super fascinating that all these transactions are on-chain, public, and I think with transparency comes accountability. And I think this is something that doesn't really exist much in Web2. We pay for assets, we engage with the game, but we don't really know what's going on. We don't know exactly how revenues or profits are being used from those sales. And I find that super fascinating now that you have this sort of accountability that comes with the transactions that are being tracked and public. So that's my take.
I see. I feel like when I look at the Japanese gaming company, I feel like the movement of why they are interested in Web3 is actually coming from the negative side. I think the Web2 competition is too harsh. Development cost is increasing, and there's not so much room for creativity. So they feel like they want to do they can do something more unique with the Web3. And I do see some like a new user behavior emerging from the Web3 because of the token economics. Like for example, like we are blockbuster game Monster Strike. We are interested in expanding this IP to like more audience. And in order to do that, one of the ways is to incentivize users by token economics. Like for example, if they support Monster Strike IP with a secondary project of the NFT or like a fan art, IP gets popular and it will incentivize the NFT holders. So that kind of new user behavior is something that we're really interested in.
Add to that?
So my thoughts on that, I love the points you mentioned about transparency and accountability and decentralization, which is the core of blockchain. I want to explore a direction on the front-end delivery or the application layer of how is it actually going to manifest in our real life, right? So Web3, I see it as a convergence of the metaverse, generative AI, and the blockchain. And if I look at metaverse as the front end, the two latest devices, the Apple Vision Pro and the Quest 3, they reshape our traditional understanding of how games are built. Games have been optimized to be run on a two-dimensional screen or your mobile phone or your laptop screen. But now on a Quest 3, two guys can sit on that table and play a game of ping pong, right? So you have this whole spatial 360 world around you, which is your real estate versus a mobile phone, which was previously a Web2 real estate. So opportunities for advertisements show up in the space around your field of view, and the assets that traditionally were present in Web 2.0 games also change. You have avatars, you have jerseys that you personally are wearing. For example, if you're a Manchester United fan, you wear a Manchester United NFT jersey, authenticated one, right? And you're playing a game with your friend. Or maybe you want to have an NFT of, I don't know, something like the Mona Lisa hanging in your room when you invite your friend for a game. So all of this becomes a very important part of asset monetization in Web3 games, especially the authentication layer. Now, there is also the data layer. In Web3, the data that is tracked is next level. In Web 2.0, you're only tracking your behavioral data. In Web3, I call it the emotional data. You're able to track your eyeball movement, maybe your heartbeat, if you pair it up with an Apple Watch. So the moment you look at an advertisement, the game publisher knows your emotion. And nobody wants to trust anyone with this data. And I believe consumers will be more comfortable when this data is decentralized, that no one has control over it. So from an application point of view, I think these two areas are very interesting use cases for Web2 devs to consider blockchain in Web3.
Cool. I mean, just to quickly summarize what everybody is saying, uh, you can look at Web3 as from a player consumer point of view. You can look at Web3 from a developer point of view. When you're looking at from a player point of view, advantages are limitless, right? You have control over your assets. You have control over what you can do with them, where you can take them, how you can utilize them. And the creator in him obviously is excited about the fact that all the work doesn't go anywhere. But as a developer, it's all about a business decision, right? Why do I give control of my business to my users, right? That's where it becomes interesting. And what Kay mentioned and Prashant did is interesting in terms of we are talking about Web3 does provide an alternative economy to potentially fund your development, right? It's we will dig into touch upon that in a minute. So that's a pretty cool thing. But then what is so much more now is if you are looking at Web3 not as just a okay, it's a blockchain layer, but if you are gonna add the immersive text like being part of the metaverse and AI, it becomes so much more, right? So that's what we're discussing. But do you guys want to touch upon a little bit more about the alternative economy Web3 can provide in terms of funding? You want to start, Ram? Because the as developers, because this is most of us are developers, I would rather just own everything myself. Why do I want to give my users any control at all? So what is the motivation for me, right, as a developer? Because I get it, yes, they get to keep those assets, but what if I owned it? I could have sold them multiple times, right? So why would I want to give that control away?
Yeah. So I'll actually give you an example of a company that we partnered with and launched in our marketplace. It was an existing Web2 game which had huge traction. They had about 30 million downloads, 900,000 MAUs, doing great. But their annual revenue was sub like $50,000, right? They were a great game, great gameplay. The retention rate was great and stuff like that. But they could not monetize this as much, and whatever they monetized, they had to pay Apple the 30% and Google Play, whatever cut that was, right? So what we did for them is we went ahead and launched them as a Web3 game last year, and they were able to sell for about $500,000 in their first drop that we did for them. So to answer your question, yes, there is transparency, but it gives you much more monetization of your asset, right? What would you want to take? Like, if I was a developer, I would take the other half where I can give transparency, yes, but I can monetize myself much more bigger and have my audience to be much more global and have my audience to have much more power on my game, right? So that is what changed for one of these developers that we worked with. And that is what we intend to do with most of the Web2 games out there. Like Web3 gives so much liquidity compared to Web2. And the aspect of the assets being tradable and know that I can buy an asset from a game, make sure that I could use it within the game and also take it outside and sell it. And also I could probably trade it for a better price because there is tradability, there is gamification around tradability and all that because of Web3. That leads a user to spend more money on a game. So I guess that's one of the core reasons why a developer should move into Web3, because you could monetize your game assets much more bigger.
Anybody else have anything else to add? Please.
I think you're talking about Web3 gaming and the funding and also revenue, right? I feel like Web3 monetization. I mean, one of the good thing about Web3 monetization is that developer can actually fund themselves in the early phase of the development. I think that's a good thing, but I think we should be cautious about two things. One is that the developer can actually raise money without viability. So they write something in the white paper without any capability. So that might be one of the issues. And the second one is actually interesting one for me, is that let's say you acquire a first group of user for your game through a token sale. And if that user is purely there for economical reason, then they might give you like a wrong signal for your game. Like if if you do some events inside of the game that will boost up the token, many like financial user might react very positively. But I think in order for us to make a sustainable Web3 game, you should really focus on someone who really love your game, not for money. So I think that is like one of the things that we need to be cautious when it comes to getting funding from Web3 way.
Yeah, so just to summarize that part, like Web3 can be looked at like a digital game Kickstarter kind of thing, right? It's like a way to fund it, but again, like just like Kickstarter, where you do need to have credibility, you do need to have proven track record that you're going to deliver on what you promise, right? But it is an incredible way to get your project funded, right? Now, there are multiple ways to do it. One of them would be obviously basic token sales, and the second one is NFT sales. As they've touched upon it, the fact that your users can actually own those assets and then they can move them around, that itself is a powerful thing, right? Now, do you guys have any insights into, in gaming primarily, tradability versus, interoperability? Which one is a better use case in Web3?
Okay, so the question was interoperability and?
Tradability.
Versus interoperability, okay. So what is important?
What do you guys think about either way, which is a better use case for Web3?
Okay. I think for now, interoperability is not very practical because most of the games are being built on Web3. So I guess they are trying to make sure that the game is good so that they can retain the users and gamers love the game and they play the game for the game and they monetize as a byproduct of that. Games are majorly building that one right now. So I don't think they're going to let couple of games to talk to each other as of now. So interoperability will be probably 4 to 5 years later in Web3. It is possible now, the infrastructure is there, but I believe it's going to take some time. Tradability is what I believe is the biggest takeaway of Web3 right now, because I could go ahead and, as I told you before, I could trade it across marketplaces, I could trade it across within games and stuff. I could put it on rent. And what also helps in tradability is that on the blockchain, you could see the provenance, right? So I bought the sword, I used the game, so I used it in the game, I bought it for like $10, I played it for like 6 months, leveled it up, it's now upskill, I could go ahead and sell it to you. Now you buy it from me for like $20 and then you upskill it and sell it for like $30 later on. So the entire provenance is actually shown on the blockchain. And now when I go ahead, the third person, when he sells it, the fourth guy who buys knows that all of this transaction is there and he knows how powerful this sword is. So that you can't bring it to Web2, right? This is by nature available in blockchain. So all of this leads to the asset being more tradable. So tradability is what is the biggest takeaway of Web3 as of now. Yeah.
Anybody else has anything to add?
So I have some thoughts on this as well. So you were talking about tradability versus interoperability.
The use case in Web3.
As a use case. So the way, I don't think it's one or the other, to be fair. I think they just have very different use cases. From my perspective, tradability is providing agency to players, and we can leverage that agency. So we can get royalties, for example, like secondaries, it's like the most basic use case. But I think it's more yeah, something that provides players with agency. And on interoperability, it's to me, it's something that adds value to the assets themselves, in a sense where you create more utility for a single, asset or item in the game. Now, in what shapes or what forms, you can do like true interoperability, right? Which is, I have a sword here, that's going to be a sword there. It's very, very hard to implement in games because of game balancing and design. I mean, not just games, but in general. But you can do like equivalence, of things. And we mentioned that before, which is, well, I get, maybe a weapon in that particular game. And if I have that in my wallet and I play another game, not even in my ecosystem, right? It could be in a separate ecosystem, then I have some kind of advantage or I have a reward or whatever, an incentive, right? You can create incentives around that. And so that's very powerful, in my opinion. Interoperability, even in the simplest kind of approximative form, can be a very powerful marketing and user acquisition tool.
Yeah, pretty much said everything I wanted to say, but yeah, I mean, I feel like interoperability as a game dev will be a little bit difficult. I mean, world setting is different from, apart from each other, so it's really difficult to implement different games asset into our game. But there's definitely a user benefit. I mean, in this competitive market, some game has to shut down very early, and all the assets and efforts they put it into the game will be lost if the game isn't finished. But if there's a tradability or like some liquidity of the in-game asset, maybe they can take it over to some other game. So as a market sentiment, maybe that kind of technology might be preferred by the users.
Can I ask a quick question, actually, to the audience, just for us to understand how many games developers do we have here? Do you mind raising the hand? Okay, that's a few of them. How many of you are already doing blockchain or considering? A few of them. Okay, that's cool. Okay, that's really good to know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, decent number. So one of the things, right, we've talked about, when we talk about Web3, when we talk about blockchain, there is this awesome, cool piece of technology. And then we are also talking ideology behind why we do this, right? How important is the ideology? Why can't we just use the cool technology and not bother with the ideology part? Because the moment you start talking about giving away, control to the users, yeah, I mean, is that important? I mean, can we just stick to, as game developers who are trying to leverage Web3 tech, do they need to also be sold on the ideology?
I can share a quick opinion. I'm going to be fast. The ideology for us is not particularly important. We're making games, we're making entertainment. So Web3, less than an ideology, is a set of features that can be useful to elevate the experience. And that's where it stops. If it aligns with our values, that's great. So, transparency and accountability, I'm like, yeah, that's great. But yeah, it's mainly a feature that we can leverage to make a better experience for some.
Yeah, so I would second that. Ideology should be only possible and should be useful if you're able to monetize the game and you're able to actually make some money with it, or else it's just you shouting and nothing happening with that. So yeah, so I guess it started where, like, people who got into Web3 initially were rebels, right? Who didn't believe in the system, who didn't believe in the centralized system. That's why there is so much preach about ideology in Web3. But if you actually take a look at it, the technology is actually very good, so that there are so much ways for you to monetize and make use of the technology, and the ideology also comes along, which intends to be great, right? So, for example, cloud computing, when it started back then, like no one, like everyone was like, oh my god, I can't move my entire database and all that stuff, that the server and all that is to cloud. Now, like, who runs their servers in-house, right? Everything is on cloud. So I guess that's where blockchain is right now. We are expecting a lot from Web3, thinking that it's going to happen in the next couple of years. It's going to take its own time. Probably in 10 years, there will be no lines between Web2 or Web3. Everything will have a blockchain as part of it, right? So that's where it will go. And we're all talking about ideology because we want to tell people what can be benefit out of this. But in the end, this will all result into monetizing with the technology much more better.
Cool. So,
So, I agree with them. Ideology, we don't really care about ideology because we care about monetization first, but compliance might become important, especially when it comes to storing data. And if you're storing intricate data, like emotional data, then no government is going to be okay with storing that on any local or cloud server, wherever, right? And that's where they might mandate a decentralized way of storing data so that nobody really has any ownership of that data. No corporation has ownership of that, and it is secure in a sense. So that's the only angle I see where the ideology of blockchain might be enforced on developers.
I mean, no matter how sophisticated ideology of Web3 we try to implement in the service, at the end of the day, who uses our service is gamer. So they need to understand, and if that is too complex, then it cannot be implemented in our game. So
cool,
let's be
that makes
practical.
sense. Well, I mean, the thing is, the fact that giving agency to your players doesn't have to impact you controlling your core system, right? It's so the business model is going to be different from what you can do with it. But Prashant, I want to understand a little bit, from a metaverse point of view, what are the what are people building in that space? Because most of us come from a different background, and we would love to hear what are you seeing? What do you see in next 3 years? What would be the game developers building in that space? How do you see them using Web3?
The key things that will change there are immersion and field of view, right? The field of view on a mobile device is maybe 2 degrees, is what I see in my hand. But in metaverse-based games, which are truly immersive, you have a 360-degree field of view, and that means more advertising space, which is less intrusive to the gamer, and more opportunities to interact with the game. I mean, it's not just a 2D screen that you're interacting, the game becomes very immersive. But when I'm looking at a monetization angle, right, there is a lot of tradability of assets, especially in the metaverse. If you're doing a 2D game, you're limited by design, by game design mechanics and features in terms of how your avatar is going to look like, how your character is going to look like. But in the metaverse, there is a lot of flexibility. So avatars are something that are going to be shared across metaverses. And then first, there is the tradability aspect of trading avatars or trading NFTs across games. So the game mechanics, all of them are going to be fundamental. The only thing that will change is maybe the field of view and the hardware that displays it. But there is a lot of other monetization angles that will start to evolve, which did not exist previously, especially trading avatars, assets, NFTs. Like I could invite you for a game of table tennis, sitting on this table with my VR headset, and maybe showcase a lot of NFTs, cool NFTs that I own, almost like a bragging thing, right? Or wear a Manchester United jersey, a real NFT. So these assets, trading these kind of NFT assets would become a new opportunity in games, in metaverse-based games especially.
Uh, I think metaverse is probably even a better use case for interoperability than traditional games, right? Because I can't get my game designers to agree on using the same art style within a sequel of a game, right? So it's forget about two different companies trying to get that over. But Metaverse has already you probably are going to have a framework in terms of design guidelines, so everybody is like have to follow it, and it's probably easier, right? So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to ask one last question before we take a couple of questions from the audience, if any. Game developers, what do you guys see as things they need to watch out for when they are doing Web3 games from a regulatory compliance point of view? Do you see any major roadblocks which they need to be cautious of? Okay, we could start with them.
I mean, regulations are different from each country. So I can only talk about Japan, please. But in terms of regulation and also taxation as well, if you're issuing a token, you have to have whatever token you issue, it has to be taxed. So there needs to be a clarification around that as well. I guess in Japan, things are getting a little bit more clear. Our government is actually pushing really strongly to actually clarify all the taxation and the legal issue so that the Web3 creator in Japan can actually thrive. But unfortunately, there is not so much use case going on. And when it comes to launching a web service, and you look at the legal terms and whatnot, and it's kind of blurred, and it's not really right on target in terms of compared to your product. So there has to be lots of product released in order to actually justify this is okay, this is not okay. So we need more use case in Japan, I think. And unfortunately, because of that, many of the Japanese Web3 creators are actually moving to Singapore or like Southeast Asia, where it's more clear or where it's more flexible. So I wish there will be more good environment in terms of Japan to actually have more Web3 product released without any hesitation.
Ben, do you have anything to say?
Thanks. I think in our case, the main thing that I would suggest game devs who are interested in Web3 to make sure that they understand the definition of a security, because this is I think one of the things that is mostly under scrutiny in the US. Making sure that the way you would implement your economy, your tokenomics, and anything Web3 related doesn't fall under the definition of a security, because you're going to have trouble publishing your game in certain countries, mostly the US. And from that angle, I would suggest everyone to be, in that case, very conservative. So essentially, any kind of content that you offer that is on-chain, make sure that it's very clear. Like you have a very clear way to explain how people are not directly profiting from it, or that going to swapping to fiat is not as simple as it could be. Like it's. I mean, of course, we all want something very simple and very straightforward, but that's not the way governments are looking at it, right, in legislation. So that's be conservative, right? Make it a game first, anyways. Don't make it about money. I think that's like probably the best way to look at that, in my opinion.
I see that Prashant thinks that Ram could go last.
I think both of you guys have covered almost everything I wanted to say. So, yeah, nothing much to add.
So they've covered most of it. One thing is that the assets are usually traded by people across the globe. So someone in India would trade it with someone sitting in Japan or in US. So you're basically trading an asset which is across borders. So the regulations have to be seen accordingly. So will definitely be a challenge. Web3 by nature is global. So wherever you're operating out of, just make sure that the cross-border transactions are legit and it's regulated. Yeah.
Well, that's about it from our end. If anybody has any questions, we could take a couple of questions. Otherwise, we could wrap. Well, it looks... Oh, okay, cool.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Sheikh Sajid. I'm from Creative Multimedia Fine Arts. I'm 18 years old. I'm a game developer, first year degree student. When I was in the 10th, I started dreaming on making a game that makes relationships more better. So I want to develop a game on emotions, and the idea is on now people play Free Fire, PUBG, and BGMI. So this is a world top game is PUBG in this trend. So I want to make my game more quality so that I can achieve my dreams. I have started writing the stories that I need to work on that. So I have selected 10 parts of the stories. I have written just one part.
Just let me interrupt you there. So if you don't have any Web3 related questions, but what do I suggest is, congratulations on building your game. There are so many awesome indies on the expo area. You should walk up to them and have a conversation, show them what you're doing, get feedback from peers, right? Get feedback from other game developers. They're going to tell you what they like. They're going to tell you what they don't. The great thing about being in video gaming space is we are all very generous with our time when it comes to other developers, right? So feel free to talk to them. That's the reason you are here. Yeah, I would be happy to answer anybody else has any Web3 related questions.
Just I was asking that how to make people more exacting for my game, how to interact with people.
That's what I meant. The idea is do interact with the indies out there, because what you're building, there are already well-known models out there. So you should probably just interact with them and learn from it.
I have
Learn
shared
from their
my
experience.
Yeah, I have shared my PDF, one of the PDF to one brother. So he said that he started saying that, bro, you need to work hard more because this script is not enough. So he
Cool.
just gave some suggestions.
Cool. We could take that offline.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Hello guys. It's a great session. So I just want to know, can we go purely decentralized way in a game, like purely decentralized, no centralization? Is it possible at the moment to go that way?
Give us a little bit more context. What do you mean by that?
I mean, I'm creating a game. Basically, I work for a Japanese-based company named No Borders. So they are creating a turn-based card game, and it has a lot of on-chain element, but it has a lot of off-chain element as well. So you cannot do a lot of API calls and contract calls, directly to Web3 because it takes a lot of transaction cost. So that's the reason what I'm asking is it like truly possible to go totally decentralized while building a game? No Web 2.
So I don't think it's fully possible right now because the game logic has to be a little bit centralized. It cannot be completely decentralized. But there are people who are trying to build games which are completely decentralized, and it's just still in development. But probably I would, since you're a game dev, you should answer that better. I'm a marketplace. I will not be the right person to answer that, but probably you could take it.
I have a question for Ben and Steve. We're trying to build a metaverse for a bank. I mean, mainly for product discovery. But his question might find relevancy in the context of gamification. So one of the features we were having in the metaverse is a 2D tile on a wall where they can interact with a game. And could this game be completely chain-based?
I think that's a question for you, actually. That's up to you really to decide. It depends on how what you want to achieve with the game. I can answer a broader question about that and maybe give you an answer. It's like what you're saying about can we make fully decentralized games? I guess it's possible. I will say from my perspective as a game developer, I need some amount of control over the context of the game, over the rules, over the way people play. I can give some amount of agency, but I also need to control the amount of agency that I'm giving. And the reason for that is because I want to create a good experience for the players. If everything is out of my control, I'm not really able to do that. So that would be my answer. And to your,
That's a very good answer, actually. Yeah.
Come again?
That's a very good answer. I mean, as game devs, we want some sense of control and what we are.
And the perspective and the idea is that I want to make a good experience.
Yeah.
That's my job. My job is to create a good experience, right?
Well, that's a wrap from our end.
So
Sorry.
another thing I need to ask from Prashant, like as you are building metaverse, I'm also building a metaverse for a Japan-based company again. It's #1 in Japan, named Zana. So the question is, like, it is not possible to reach all the masses using the VR headset that you're talking about. So for now, is mobile and web platform suitable for metaverse, or there is no meaning for that?
There's WebXR, which is going to bridge that gap for now. Look at WebXR and WebGPU, and you'll get more context on this.
Okay. Thanks.
This is the last question, guys, please.
Hello. Sir, actually I'm from Delhi and I am a 3D artist, and I wanted to know how far are we from the vision of movie Ready Player One?
Ready Play.
Ready Player One movie where we have open environment and earn, in some sort of cryptocurrencies by playing games?
Good question. I will let the panelists talk about that.
I
I
wanted to
can give a
specially know
short.
from Sir Kai sir.
How far are we from Ready Player?
Ah, player one. Okay. How do we number that actually? I think we're a little bit far away, I think. I'm not probably the best person to talk about metaverse because, when it comes to Web3 and Mixi, it's more of a blockchain, not so much of a VR. So it's virtual world. It's something that Mixi's definitely take a look at it. But I think, to answer your question, Ready Player One is a little bit far away, so maybe VR business might be something that we might not be interested right now at this moment. So that's my answer.
So it will take a little bit time.
I can share an answer. I mean, at least my perspective. I'm a 3D artist originally by trade as well, so I understand the question. So there is a challenge with standards, right? Like if you want to create a space where you can have any kind of avatars, because that's what we're talking about, right? Ready Player One is you can be anyone, you can do anything. Let's talk about the can be anyone first, like the do anything. That's another story. But avatar, there is no standard really. Like I think we have like VRM, we have an OpenGL standard. I can't remember like packaging kind of standard, but none of these things are actually at a stage where you could create a place where anyone can just come in and drop their avatar to just roam together in the same space, right? I think we're getting closer. There will be at some point a standard, but it's not there yet. Do you have any other opinion?
Something really different. My thoughts on this are 5G. Obviously, there's the prevalence of 5G, but look at the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2021. It was given to a scientist who discovered the mechanisms of digitizing senses or digitizing the touch of pressure, the signal that our nerves receive when somebody applies pressure or heat, and the signal that is transferred to the brain. So the Nobel Prize was given to the scientist who discovered this. So I hope that someday, when we are able to actually productize this, that is going to be Ready Player One, right? And
Well-
Nobel Prizes are an interesting benchmark because you've seen what magnetic resonance did to MRI in healthcare, right? And that was, I think, 2012 sometime. So apply the same timeline, maybe 7-8 years we'll have that.
There you have your answer. All the pieces are already there.
Thank you.
AI is catching up to a point where you can be the way you are in a virtual world. It's just a matter of time. So all the pieces are there. Do we really want it? That's a different question, but we're almost there. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening us, and thank you all.